Imagine that your dream for the future is so close that you can almost taste it. You've experienced the wide open spaces that go hand in hand with life on a yacht, sailing the entire length of the beautiful east coast of Australia, from Queensland down to Tasmania, surrounded by miles and miles of sea. The plan is that your partner will retire in another 12 months or so, and then you'll have the freedom to go wherever your fancy takes you, whilst enjoying miles and miles of open sea. Then suddenly, it's all gone. Your partner is missing and presumed to be deceased. Your beautiful new yacht is now a tainted crime scene, and you've been convicted of a crime that you didn't do, and are facing spending anywhere up to the next 23 years of your life in prison. Stuck in close confines with other inmates in an area far smaller than your average schoolyard. That's the life that Sue Neill Fraser found herself living for 13 years before she was granted parole. Sue made the best of a bad situation and settled into a life of minimum security, enjoying the small added freedoms which came from such a classification, and doing whatever was within her capacity to help fellow inmates. In 2021, Sue wrote a piece for her supporters describing her daily life as a minimum security prisoner, an insightful and revealing piece which at the same time was somewhat innocent, not revealing any information about fellow inmates or any details which could compromise the workings of the prison. For this, however, she was harshly and, in my opinion, unfairly dealt with. In this video, I'm going to begin by reading a short piece about the repercussions faced by Sue for writing her letter, followed by reading the letter itself. I'll let you be the judge. Was there something terribly revealing in this letter, which warranted the consequences which were imposed on Sue? This piece was written by Andrew Urban and was published on September the 5th of 2021. Titled Sue Neill Fraser in Solitary. Sue Neill Fraser has been moved into solitary confinement for 5 days from the end of last week, and will then move to maximum security, losing all privileges she has earned over the past decade of incarceration. Sue Neill Fraser's daughter Sarah Bowles found out on Saturday. No clear reasons have been given. The decision to move Neill Fraser was made on the eve of the Saturday, September 4th vigil held outside Parliament, and follows the unorthodox intervention by Police Commissioner Darren Hine the day before, in a statement that rebuts criticisms of the original police investigation and stating as fact that Sue Neill Fraser is guilty. His statement has drawn criticism and surprise. Needless to say, her family is distraught and concerned that further hardship is inflicted on a woman they consider to have been in prison unjustly for 12 years. More reporting to come. As I already mentioned, these actions occurred directly after Sue's letter about her life in prison was published. Following this article, it was later claimed by prison officials that the action of putting Sue in solitary confinement was the result of her breaching prison rules, simply by sharing her letter about daily life in prison. I find this kind of interesting because prison inmates are allowed to write letters to family outside of prison, and there is a Daily Mail collection. I have no doubt that in a location such as a prison, that many inmates would have little to write about other than their daily existence. So what's the difference? Okay, so let's move on to Sue's account of her life in prison and see if there is anything so thoroughly scurrilous that made it worth putting her into solitary confinement and losing all her privileges. A day in the life Sue Neill Fraser. Posted September 2nd, 2021. So note that's only 3 days before the action against Sue. Incarcerated in the women's section of Hobart's Risdon prison since August 20, 2009, Sue Neill Fraser is awaiting the outcome of her second appeal against the conviction for a murder she vehemently denies, and many others regard as wrongful. Security regulations prohibit the revelation of specifics about the day-to-day running of the prison, but her variously moving and entertaining diary below gives us a glimpse into a typical day in her life. We wake each morning to the dulcet tones of a PA announcement. This is your 6:45 wake-up call, usually followed by the edifying news that we will be locked down for part or all of that day. Lockdowns are far more prevalent than they used to be, mostly due to lack of staff, and during these phases, inmates can expect to be confined in their cells, buildings, or unit boundaries. I'm in a minimum rated area, so I have the good fortune to be able to get out in the fresh air and also have access to a computer most of the time. As an aside here, there have been articles published about the conditions faced by inmates when required to spend the day in lockdown. For minimum security prisoners, they at least are able to wander around in their unit. For those prisoners who are medium security or maximum security, they find themselves spending their entire day locked in a small cell, essentially in isolation. We have gatherings, musters at different times each day to ensure no one has burrowed under or parachuted over the perimeter fence, or, heaven forbid, died in the night. Mind you, the fence is so high one would need to build a trebuchet to sail over it. Following the wake-up call, I hop on an exercise machine for 20 minutes, after which a posse of officers arrive to count us and our metal cutlery, in case it's been put to forbidden unspecified use. Then showers and medication, where the queue often stretches to Timbuktu. I take vitamins, so I also have to line up under the beady eye of a custodial officer who asks to look in your mouth to make sure the tablets have disappeared. Think fledglings in a nest begging for food. There is good reason for this. Some inmates are quite clever at concealing the tablets, then, reminiscent of cormorants, regurgitating and trafficking them to others. The first time I observed this process, I saw what appeared to be convulsive choking, and assuming it was the real thing, slapped the inmate's back, causing the tablets to fly forth across the room. The intended recipient pounced and, thanking me, explained what was going on. Naturally, these antics swiftly led to increasingly bizarre behaviour, a dead giveaway, ensuring the issue is picked up quickly. We have another muster at 9, euphemistically entitled Labour Parade, where all inmates line up to be recounted in a common area. The real purpose of this is to make sure no one simply goes back to bed after medication to sleep their sentence away. Assuming no lockdown, inmates then disperse to their jobs, if they have one, or attend courses. My official job title is peer mentor, which entails assisting new inmates' inductions into the prison, explaining the rules and showing them the ropes. Unofficially, I help out with a range of issues: tutoring, interpreting legal mail, correcting documents, writing inmates' mitigation pleas. The list goes on. Having no legal training whatsoever, I was initially reluctant to become involved in this area. However, I changed my mind after it became clear that some inmates were illiterate and unable to read, let alone interpret or reply to letters from their lawyers. Others were not eligible for legal aid, a dire situation often affecting those already serving sentences, and then arraigned on fresh charges which didn't meet funding guidelines. Almost every morning, I'm approached, usually in the medication line, where there is no escape, with a request from someone who hasn't mastered the art of writing, or if they have, can't bring themselves to compose a document to anyone in authority without a liberal sprinkling of expletives. I'm handed a note along the lines of, "If your honour had effing well let me out the last two effing times, I wouldn't have belted the k together with a muttered request. Can you fix it up, Sue?" These diversions can take time to sort out. Recently, a sheaf of papers was thrust under my nose with an outrage. "You got to help me, my lawyer's no good. It just hung up on me." Well, no surprises there. Once I unearthed the facts for the prosecutor, it turned out the aggrieved, a well-known thief, had been charged with absconding from the supermarket with 42 tins of powdered sports drink concealed into her jacket, and there was CCTV footage. "Did you take them?" "Nah, I only steal meat and makeup." "Stop, I don't want to hear it." Having read hundreds of these missives destined for prosecutors, I'd long since reached the inescapable conclusion that significant flights of fancy could afflict the authors in this case. I really didn't see how the small being in front of me could hide one tin, let alone 42, on her person. We wrote back politely requesting a copy of the CCTV footage to verify this astonishing accusation. As predicted, the tape went missing and the charge dropped. When arrested 12 years ago, I refused to believe such things occurred. Wiser now, as the morning wears away, there are frequent interruptions to relieve the monotony. People with a serious drug habit often come in looking skeletal, having omitted to eat much real food in the pursuit of ice, the most likely curse of their lives. Once clean, they then become ravenous, eating everything in sight. We in minimum units are able to save some of our unused meals, cereals, etc. for cooking, a resource which becomes very attractive to those who don't have access to it. With breakfast a distant memory, various hungry souls arrive from medium to lurk at our front gate, and, reminiscent of a flock of predatory seagulls, screech appeals for leftovers. "You got any biscuits, meals? Eaten your dessert yet? Do you want it, or can I have it? What about an egg, then?" Anyone stepping outside with any sort of bowl or container immediately attracts the attention of a dozen pairs of eyes, which, with shark-like focus, zoom in to determine whether something edible might be had. At lunchtime, we're locked down for an hour, a time I use to rummage through legal precedents in the hope of finding useful information applicable to my case. I also make phone calls. I have 2 beautiful daughters and 4 grandchildren, and it really brightens my day if I can catch up with them. I find that I can no longer afford the self-pitiful luxury of allowing myself to dwell on all that is lost. Long-held plans to introduce them to farm life, skiing, sailing, horse riding, all the good things we'd planned to do together. However, I can ask them about their day's activities: tadpole catching, model building, bike riding, maths homework, horrors, and so on. Short, miserable cold days and grey skies, dismal features of Tasmanian winters, are once again upon us. So much of my time is currently spent out of the icy chill under cover. Ridiculous as it sounds, I never seem to have any spare hours in the day. By the time I finish one document and begin the next, it's time for the 5 o'clock evening lockdown. In summer, any spare time was spent in the vegetable garden, weeding, planting, watering, pruning. It's restful for the soul, away from the noise and drama that is part and parcel of prison life. Years ago, I began a seed saving program, a resource which continues to provide a good supply of greens, which we then harvest, then cook to complement the dreaded chill meals supplied by the prison. We no longer get any fresh fish, only the Besser block grey, heavily battered variety of, I suspect, dubious provenance, scurrilous offerings from northern neighbours. So I take fish oil instead, much safer, and dream of sushi. One of the saddest things I see in prison is the incarceration of people due to mental health issues. It occurs with monotonous regularity. And although the custodial officers of the prison are supportive and do their best to engage, timely professional intervention remains far from our shores. Our time is pretty much circumscribed, and there isn't a great deal of intellectual stimulation. Due to COVID, visits have been kept one a week instead of the usual three. And I really miss the interaction at times, feeling as if I'm caught up in a kind of existential Groundhog Day existence. Connection to the outside world is vital to combating this malaise. However, it's tempered by the realization that visiting the Risdon Riviera, as I call it, is not everyone's cup of tea. In fact, for some, it's nervous breakdown territory. Just navigating security can be an ordeal. Sniffed by dogs lined up in queues with other visitors, some of whose only use for a bar of soap has been to grease lock mechanisms to ease away of picking them. All a bit grim, and I will remain very grateful to all those who continued to make the effort, some for over a decade. So, for now, life plods on, more stolen years ticking away. So there it is, the letter which apparently was so scurrilous that it warranted removing all Sue's privileges. Personally, I can't see anything wrong with it. She's not identified any prisoners by name, nor has she identified any prison guards by name. She's not raised any allegations against prison guards or against the prison itself. And I think most importantly, a quick Google search of Risdon Prison will bring up multiple articles about the prison where there have been calls for investigations because of failings within the prison system. These articles say so much more than anything Sue has said in these letters. You can find so much more scurrilous information about Risdon Prison simply via a Google search. To me, it seems that the only reason that Sue was punished was because of some sort of petty vendetta by someone within the prison system who had the power to action such consequences. What are your thoughts on this? Leave a comment below on whether or not you believe this was a fair treatment of Sue. I plan on continuing to highlight Sue Neill Fraser's case, so please click on that subscribe button. It's free and it helps the channel. It also means that, providing YouTube is behaving, you should get notification anytime I drop a new video.